Not all men, but somehow always a man. Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, I'm Eric. I have a stutter and blink twice if you think I'm in danger. So I watched Blink Twice, Zoe Kravitz's directorial debut starring her husband Channing Tatum as Slater King, a tech mogul self-made billionaire who invites a group of women and friends to his private island. And what ensues is dangerous, disturbing, up. Oh my god. Damn. If you've seen Blink Twice, you know what happens, and if you haven't seen Blink Twice, the best piece of advice that I could give you is try and go in as blind as possible. Like, genuinely, just go in as blind as you can, which at this point might be a little bit hard because it's been out for a while now, but I recently watched it and it's something. It truly is the year of the Me Too movement. That's what people are calling it. We had It Ends With Us. Now we have Blink Twice. And though both deal with similar themes, male violence, misogyny, they have a completely different approach. The Blink Twice approach, it's a bit more visceral and brutal and in your face. It's a bit more obvious and it shows you that this shit's gotta stop. Now, of course, it's not gonna stop, but trigger warning, big trigger warnings for this film. A lot of SA, a lot of grape. Let's call it grape and graping because I don't want my video to be demonetized. I don't want this to be shadow banned, but it's something that we need to talk about. And if we have to tiptoe around the terms, then that's what we'll do. Please don't report me. But if you want to know what happens in the movie, or if you've seen it and just want to hang back and chill for a bit, then kick back, relax, enjoy, grab a drink, and prepare yourself because this is intense. It is intense and it may be useful to watch a video summarizing the story rather than putting yourself through watching it if this is something that truly triggers you. But I did want to touch on some piece of criticism that the film has received for its portrayal of violence against women, particularly sexual violence. And though I understand why those critics feel that way, it can be a bit much for some. I also agree with Zoe Kravitz in the way that she made this not to exploit the pain or the trauma, but to make it so that people are uncomfortable, so that people are faced with what is actually happening. Because if we want to change things, we do have to talk about them. And one way of really confronting the issue is facing it head on with unfortunate but necessary hardcore depictions of that violence. And I think that Zoe Kravitz does a really good job at balancing how much she shows versus not. I don't think it's exploitative in any way. I actually think that she holds back a lot. She's very methodical with just how much we're taken along this visceral, violent journey without it making it seem like she's just showing us gratuitous violence. It doesn't feel gratuitous in any way, at least to me. But others may feel differently, and I respect that. Everyone has their own experiences and everyone has their own perceptions, and yeah, it can be considered polarizing, though the critical reception has mostly been positive, which I agree with. Obviously, the movie's not without its faults. It has some plot holes and interesting choices along the way that don't really make a lot of sense. But hey, it's a film. We have to suspend our disbelief to some extent for these stories to be told, and that's what we're gonna do today. But before we do, make sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel, click that bell notification so you never miss a future upload from me, and leave a comment down below. Air out your feelings and your grievances against this film. Also, blink twice if you're in danger. Okay? Great. So let's get into Blink Twice, which immediately starts with a trigger warning, which is very apt for this story. And we meet Frida. Frida is our main character, played by Naomi Aki. Frida is a nail artist who spends a lot of time on the toilet, doom scrolling on her phone. I know we all do it, but that's how you get hemorrhoids, so stop. And while she's on her phone, she stumbles across this apology from Slater King, a tech mogul, self-made billionaire's apology video. The apology is as vague as you would imagine it to be. He apologizes for his behavior, he's gone to therapy, and he stepped away from his company to work on himself. And then she reads a few articles whose headlines never mention what he's actually apologizing for, just abuse of power and regrettable behavior, and then mentioning King Tech Foundation's biggest philanthropic gift in history. And we then see an interview of him upon his return stating that he took time away from things and he actually bought himself his own little private island to reflect on his behavior, I guess. And listen, 5 minutes in, and there's a lot to be said already. First of all, I doubt that nowadays this would happen. Imagine Slater King is like Elon Musk if Elon Musk was hot. And considering the amount of egregious things that Elon Musk has already said on the internet and has said in interviews and has defended, sure, the profitability of Twitter may have taken a huge dump, but I don't think he's ever going to be canceled. If he hasn't been canceled thus far, I genuinely don't think he could. So, though I appreciate the sentiment that at this point in time this could happen to someone, no. His apology is very vague, and I think that's on purpose because we see this a lot with celebrities apologizing, right? We've seen this with actors, with YouTubers, with TV hosts, with politicians, and the apologies are always very vague, very general statements like, I apologize for any pain that I brought to people, I've made a mistake, I had a lapse in judgment, but they never actually truly address the issue head on because that would be reminding people of what they did, right? And if you apologize by directly mentioning what you've done, you're telling a lot of people that may have never heard of your name what you've actually done, which immediately taints your image in their minds, but you're also revisiting this supposed bad behavior that you've exhibited. So vague apologies are always that amuse-bouche of, I hear my critics and I'm here to take accountability, which again isn't taking accountability because you're not actually apologizing directly. You're just making a vague statement on how you're working on yourself and how you've taken time to truly think about your actions and realize how wrong you were and how much people need to extend grace to you because in their minds, you apologize, immediately everything is forgiven, right? That's just how it goes. And then, of course, the philanthropic gift serves as a kind gesture. You know, you have all of this wealth, you've made a mistake, and to compensate, you're going to donate a bunch of money to a few chosen charities, and that's it. You clean your hands of all of the dirty shit you've done. And if you're doing this apology and you're a YouTuber, then you monetize that apology, you go viral, and you cash in those big checks with your apology because, you know, everything is money. Everything is money. And then you go online and you complain about cancel culture, which again is not a real thing. Elon Musk is a perfect example of that. If cancel culture was a thing, Donald Trump wouldn't be running for president, Elon Musk wouldn't have the platform that he has, J.K. Rowling wouldn't still be attached to an adaptation of Harry Potter, Kyle Rittenhouse wouldn't have a platform advocating for gun use after literally killing people. Cancel culture isn't real. What's real is your financial potential, right? You're only canceled once your financial potential dries out. If you offend all of your audiences and you don't have a different audience to fall back onto, you're going to be canceled because people don't want to associate themselves with you. But if you're problematic to a certain audience, but then you attract a bunch of other problematic people that actually support your behavior, then all is good. We can now see a rise in right-wing influencers who make a living out of being offensive and making money off of behaviors that 10 years ago would have gotten them canceled because you didn't have those very loud and vocally proud right-wingers supporting these influencers, these TV hosts, these actors. Anyone who's ever been canceled for something can make a comeback. All they have to do is find their niche. And as shitty as that is, that's the world we live in. So Slater King being canceled, sure. This is where we kind of suspend our disbelief a bit. And I mean, Zoe Kravitz started writing this story before the Me Too movement back in 2017, I think. So she did mention that she's had to adapt some of the storylines and some of the dialogue to really keep up with the times because a lot has changed in past years. And I think this is one of those things that I don't see happening right now, but for the sake of the film, Slater King has apologized for a certain behavior, and that's it. And Frida seems very into him. Slater King, played by Channing Tatum, is attractive, and he has these veneer teeth that he looks like he's about to make a TikTok on how going to Turkey and getting cheap teeth has ruined his mouth. Meanwhile, Frida works as a server, I'm assuming for like a catering company. They do events, and she's working at this event with her friend Jess, friend and flatmate, an event for King Tech Foundation, Slater King's company. And after working hours, they put on dresses and they join the party because Frida really wants to connect with Slater King. I mean, he's a self-made billionaire. He is incredibly hot. And because we're never really told what the inappropriate behavior he's displayed is, I'm assuming he's been inappropriate towards women, but assumptions only get you so far. Frida and Jess get to the party, and Frida falls on the floor, catching the attention of Slater King, who quickly introduces her to his therapist, played by the guy from Showgirls. Remember him? Lego Man? And we're quickly introduced to the rest of the cast, which include a group of women and men, starting with Cody, played by Simon Rex, Slater's childhood friend. He's like the clown of the group, the stoner type of guy who's apparently an excellent cook, chef. Then we have Vic, played by Christian Slater. He is Slater's right-hand man, who's recently been appointed the CEO of King Tech, and he's like the dad of the group. Then we got Heather and Camilla. They're just two bubbly girls who seem to just be happy to be there and drinking and having fun. We got Stan, the ex-military guy who's Slater's security guard. He's quiet but deadly. Then we got Tom, played by Haley Joel Osment, who's been upgraded from a creepy child to a creepy man-child. Then we got Lucas, the good guy who claims to be good because he doesn't directly harm women, but he also doesn't do anything to stop said harm. He looks like all of the young Republicans online that are advocating for the Republican Party as being like the best party for young people, when it's clearly not. The Republicans are good for the elite. Then we got Sarah, a resourceful gal who was on 8 seasons of Survivor Babes or something. It's like a Survivor type series with hot women, because why the f not? And we got Stace, played by Gina Davis. She's like the mommy of the group, Slater's kind of personal assistant that keeps the party going without actually interfering with it. And after hours of conversation, Frida and Jess are invited by Slater King to join the group in his private island. And listen, no, never accept an invitation from someone who's taking you to a private island. First of all, it's a private island. It's in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the ocean. But also, you don't just accept invitation from really rich men, because the more resources they have, the more they can get away with. Also, private island, it's giving very Jeffrey Epstein private island vibes. You know what I mean? It's just not safe. But Frida is so enthralled by Slater that she accepts the invitation, and off they go on this plane. I also think that seeing Camilla and Heather and Sarah in the group has given them some sort of comfort, like, okay, these women know these guys, and they're going to this island, so, you know, there's power in numbers. If they're okay with it, it should be fine for us too. Now, they get to the island, and it's very beautiful. It's like taking an expensive vacation on a private resort where you don't actually have to pay for anything. And while getting ready in her room, Frida finds this fragrance called Desiderea, and she sprays some on her. Girl, no. And before she can join the others by the pool, she bumps into a maid who swiftly calls her Red Rabbit very intently with a fat smile on her face. Frida and Slater speak, and he actually mentions that the fragrance that she had in her room, Desiderea, comes from these flowers that only grow in this island specifically. He also mentions that they have a pest problem, a lot of lash vipers, and that he feels bad for killing them all while we see all of the employees of this house, this resort, catching snakes to presumably kill them afterwards. And then they have this conversation about therapy, which is very important for the film. What do they think about therapy? And Frida says it's bullshit. Like, why would she pay someone copious amounts of money to talk about her problems when she can just deal with them head on? Whereas Slater mentions that his therapist, Rich, the guy from Showgirls, is actually working on repressed memories because Slater doesn't seem to remember anything that happened to him before the age of 10. And Frida's like, why would you pay him to unlock those memories? Like, I would pay to forget my trauma. It's an interesting question of, would you rather remember your trauma and deal with it in therapy, or would you rather completely forget that it ever happened so that you don't have that trauma lingering in your mind? And I personally think that dealing with trauma is healthy in a sense, because you process all of these complex emotions and you learn from them and you grow from them. But I also understand that some trauma can be too much for the human mind. It can fragment your mind and like do all of this crazy shit that really damages you in the long run. And sometimes forgetting that trauma, forgetting that you went through that, can protect you and your mind in the long run. But it should also be up to the person that has experienced the trauma, whether they want to deal with it or not. But they end the conversation with Slater saying that I guess sometimes forgetting is a gift. And for the next few days, they party pretty much the same way every day. They have lavish lunches and dinners with the best organic cooked food, all while drinking copious amounts of alcohol, smoking a shit ton of weed, and doing a lot of drugs, including MDMA drops, which I find very ahead of its time. No more powder, no more drinking shitty drinks. You just put a couple of drops in your mouth and you trip all night. And as time progresses, first of all, it becomes very confusing how long they've been there, how many days have gone by. They never know which day it is. And the entire time, Slater keeps asking Frida if she's having a good time, almost like constantly checking on her as if to create a fail-safe plan in case anything goes wrong. She can never say that he wasn't worried or concerned about their well-being because he kept asking. He kept wanting to reassure them that he cares and that he wants to know if you're having a good time, because if you're not, we can make changes. We can make changes to accommodate whatever you need. We're here for you. Your experience matters. All the while, Frida and Slater continue building on this relationship. They become closer and closer, almost like his intoxicating presence around her is feeding this fascination she has with him. And she mentions a couple times to her friend Jess that she's felt invisible a lot, and now she's finally not invisible. People are noticing her, particularly a really rich, attractive man. And there's a constant theme of Jess's lighter being passed around to people, and Jess constantly asking where her lighter is, and a different person has it each time, and she never remembers who she gave it to or how they got it. Other details start cropping up, like Frida finding dirt under her fingernails but not remembering how it got there, or waking up with a robe completely clean when the night before she spilled a lot of red meat juice on it, or even Heather getting bangs and not remembering when she got bangs. And I feel like that's a very important detail. A woman getting a haircut, not just a haircut, but full-on bangs and not remembering when she got them. And no one finds this weird, which can be attributed to the copious amounts of alcohol they're consuming and drugs they're doing, because they're constantly smoking big fat joints and drinking champagne and just partying by the pool. It's understandable that time is getting confusing. You're almost living in the same kind of hazy sort of holiday that they are. You're kind of lost, but you're not truly lost. So you can sense that something is wrong, but you're not really sure what it is, and you don't really have the time to want to think about it because you're so engrossed in this like party mode that you're just you're letting it happen. You're letting it happen organically. And it all changes when one night Jess is bitten by one of these vipers that are like infesting the island. She freaks out, Slater kills the viper, but it all seems fine. It's not poisonous, she's not going to die. And they all seemingly move on quite quickly from that. Until later that night when we see Jess all by herself staring blankly at the sky with a nosebleed. And then immediately cuts to Frida waking up the next day. She wanders around in the island and stumbles onto this little hut, this little cabana. And inside the cabana, the walls are filled with these red gift bags. And as odd as it seems, she finds this door, and inside is the maid, the one that called her Red Rabbit, and the woman presents her a green concoction in a bottle. She offers it to Frida, and Frida's like, okay, sure. She takes a gulp, a disgusting drink it was, and quickly realizes that the drink she's just had is venom. Snake venom, which understandably freaks her out, even more so when the maid continuously repeats Red Rabbit, Red Rabbit, Red Rabbit, scaring her off. And this causes her to start feeling disoriented, incredibly dehydrated, thirsty, and just weird. She's not feeling right, but she's not alarming anyone. She's trying to kind of deal with it in her own right. And that day, all the men decide to go on an excursion to do alpha men shit, whatever. They're probably gonna go to an Andrew Tate convention, leaving all the women behind to smoke weed by the pool. And that's when Frida notices that Jess is gone. She asks all the women, "Where's Jess?" And they all very frankly ask her, "Who is Jess?" Like, we don't know who Jess is. And Frida panics and runs back to Jess's room, only to realize that her room is actually just a storage room and has been a storage room for ages. It's almost like Jess never set foot on this island, and the only person that remembers her is Frida. She also remembers a dream, flashes of a dream of Jess telling her to hide a knife, and then she finds the knife hidden behind the mirror in her room. Later, Sarah visits her room because she found Jess's name on the side of the lighter that they've all been using. And Sarah basically tells her, like, it's weird that I don't remember a whole person being here, but I also don't think that you're lying. And Frida explains that she feels like they're forgetting things, that they're not keeping track of the days, and then finds out that Sarah doesn't actually know any of these guys, nor does Camilla or Heather. They realize that all the women met the men that night, and they were invited that night, and they all tagged along because they all assumed that the other women knew the guys. So all these women are just strangers to these men, and they don't know any of them. And they realize how dumb they were to actually go along with it because they should have known better. So they investigate this cabana that Frida stumbled upon earlier, and they start putting the pieces together and theorize that the fragrance they've been using has been erasing their memories somehow. They also conclude they can't really call the police because they don't have any memories of any bad things happening to them. They just know that they've forgotten. And this is when shit starts going downhill very fast. Somehow Frida remembers Jess, but no one else does. And she remembers that Jess was bitten by a spider, and then Frida drank the venom of the spider. Therefore, the venom of the spider has to be the antidote for whatever is happening to them. So she gives Sarah some, and Sarah drinks it straight away, no problem, because, she's smart. And then to get Camilla and Heather to remember but not alarm them, they pretend like they're doing shots, and that the snake's venom is actually tequila. So they have a little party all afternoon drinking shots of this venom to hopefully jog their memories. They even rope Stace into it. She also drinks some shots, gets drunk on the pool. And then starts the true tension. Because at this point, you have Frida and Sarah freaking out in panic, but they can't let the men see that. They can't let the men know that they know something is going on. Frida investigates Slater's office and finds a box full of Polaroids of different women and different men. And as memories start coming back to her, she realizes what's actually been happening this entire time. Slater King has been inviting men and women to this island so that men can grape the women, and then using the fragrance so that women forget the grapes and life moves on. And they're doing this every night. So every night they party, they eat, they do drugs, then the men grape the women, then the women forget what happened, they wake up, none the wiser, and the cycle repeats. And because they're not forgetting everything that's happening to them, just certain portions of the day, of the night, they don't actually know how long they've been there. It could have been 2 days, it could have been a week, it could have been 2. She also remembers that on one of the nights, unclear if it was the night before or 2 nights ago, Jess was killed because, according to Slater, she's not forgetting things. Frida even remembers Slater's therapist, Rich, the guy from Showgirls, also graped her. And we're not explained how the fragrance works exactly, only that it makes people forget their trauma. The worse the trauma, the more they'll forget. Because it's not really trauma if you forget about it, right? And this is one of those things about grape culture that are so disgusting when women are accused of not remembering the details correctly, either because it's been so long or because they were intoxicated or because, no, she said yes, but she was stumbling a little bit, but, I got consent. Unreliable reports of the assault that can't be trusted because who are you going to trust, the drunk woman or the sober man? And this movie's just taking it to the extreme and making it so that they completely forget what has happened. It's really disgusting, and now they're on self-preservation mode. They continue pretending like nothing's happened. They have dinner, and it's very tense. You can see that Sarah and Frida are struggling to keep it together, especially when Slater looks incredibly suspicious and asks question after question, almost like he's trying to catch them in a lie. So Frida decides to distract everyone by starting to dance, and they all erupt in dancing. And this gives them enough time for Heather and Camilla to finally remember what has actually happened. And once they do, complete chaos, bloodbath. It's very gory from here on out, but women fight back, starting with Camilla, who stabs Tom to death before she gets pinned down and tied by Slater and taken into his office. Heather beats Vic with a chessboard almost to a pulp, but then unfortunately is shot in the head by Stan, the security guard. Meanwhile, Sarah stabs Cody in the hand and then later shoots him in the woods. Stan chases Frida through the woods, and as he's about to kill her, Sarah shows up and saves the day by beating him to death with a rock. And Lucas is just there, screaming in terror. Then Stace, who's also remembered what's been happening, attacks Frida because she didn't want to remember. She would rather forget because men are going to do what men are going to do, and it's better to forget than to know. This is what we call the pick-me girls who prefer to play along the rules hoping that men will pick them, Make them the wife. Treat them with kindness and respect while all the other women get f***ed. So Frida does the smart thing. She stabs her to death. We also realize through a Polaroid that Frida finds that she was actually on this island a year before. She's suffered all of this abuse a year before. It's actually how she got a scar on her head. And it was during that stay that she bit Vic's finger off, his pinky. But the fragrance is so potent that she completely forgot she even went to the island. And at the time, she had red rabbits on her nails, which is why the maid called her Red Rabbit. Now, at this point, Slater, Lucas, and Vic are in his office, along with Camilla, who Slater strangles to death with his foot. And then he proceeds to mock Lucas and calls him the worst of the worst because he did nothing. And by nothing, he means he didn't abuse any of the women, but he also didn't try and help them. He didn't stop any of the abuse. He was just as complicit. It's the type of guy that doesn't tell misogynistic jokes, but hears them and laughs at them rather than pointing out that that's not fair or that's not funny. It's the type of man that likes to self-congratulate on being a good person because he's not out there raping women, all the while defending his friends who are rapists. You know, it's like when Ashton Kutcher or Mila Kunis defended their friend Danny Masterson, I think, when he was, accused of raping women, and they spoke highly about his character to the court, and they pleaded for him to not go to jail because his daughter deserves to grow up with a father in her life, and he's a good dad. Yeah, he's a good dad that's been raping women, but sure, let's focus on how great of a dad he is. Or J.K. Rowling, who spent years and years hating on trans women under the guise of protecting women's spaces, who then congratulates Marilyn Manson, known rapist, on his work, or how she defends Johnny Depp's inclusion in Fantastic Beasts, another known abuser. It's these self-aggrandizing people that think because they're not actively directly harming women that they're free of guilt. And he tells Lucas, you did nothing. You actually did nothing, and there's a special place in hell for people like you. Frida and Sarah then stage an attack to this house and manage to shoot Lucas in the head before Frida is dragged inside by Slater, and there's a physical altercation, but he obviously gets the upper hand, ties her up, and then talks to her, has a little monologue about his recent apology, how he's apologized endlessly, how he said he's sorry, and he has this little monologue that I guess is meant to show his acting chops. It was okay. And he talks about how there's no forgiveness, just forgetting. It doesn't matter how much you say sorry, it matters how much people forget, which unfortunately is true, but also this is what people say when they apologize but they don't mean it, or when they just apologize because they've been caught. They don't actually mean it. They don't actually do the work to redeem themselves. There's certain things that you can apologize for and get redemption from, and then there's serial abuse that is just absolutely not a one-time thing. It's not a moment of weakness. It's not a lapse in judgment. It's a character trait. Sometimes it wasn't a lapse in judgment, Kevin. Sometimes it's just your personality. It's just you being a horrible person, objectively a bad human being that doesn't actually deserve redemption because you're irredeemable. Some people are irredeemable, and Slater King is one of them. But he shows that he doesn't actually regret any of his behavior, and he seems to imply that he really likes Frida and that he's willing to forego everything that's happened so far if she's willing to forget and move on with him, presumably. But the conversation gets interrupted by Sarah outside, who's trying to break in. So Slater goes and chases her through the woods. And while he does that, Frida cuts herself loose and actually laces his vape, the vape that he's kept on him the entire film, the vape that he's heavily addicted to. She laces it with the fragrance. So he drags Sarah back into his office, takes a few puffs of his vape, and suddenly forgets what happened the entire night. He freaks out at seeing all the dead bodies around him, at seeing Sarah tied up and Frida all battered and bruised, slips, hits his head, knocks himself unconscious, which gives Frida and Sarah an opportunity to cut themselves loose and set the house on fire with Vic in there burning. Frida saves Slater from the fire, and Sarah's like, "Are you sure you know what you're doing?" And she's like, "Yep." And then we cut to 1 year later. They're at the same gala that we saw at the beginning of the movie, but this time, Slater is now married to Frida. Frida is now the CEO of King Tech, and Frida has actually been lacing his vape regularly every single day to keep him compliant. So now Slater is a lapdog. He does whatever she wants, and she is a boss bitch who is no longer invisible. And the cherry on top of the cake, at the end, Rich, the therapist, the guy from Showgirls, talks to Slater, talking about how he wants to continue the conversation, but Slater clearly doesn't remember him. You know who does? Frida. Rich freaks out at seeing Frida there and then is taken away by security guards. And that's how the film ends. I love the ending because this is how you f the patriarchy over. Killing Slater would have maybe been Instant gratification, yes, but what better punishment for a powerful, successful, abusive man than to take away all of his power and success and make him a literal bitch? Loved it. If there was a flower, if there was a fragrance that could absolutely make women forget their trauma and forget their pain, I think 100% what happened in Blink Twice would happen in a heartbeat in real life. We've already seen that it happens without the existence of a fragrance that makes you forget. All you need is powerful men with deep pockets who can make all the charges go away and who can silence you, who can make you disappear if they want to. It's never enough to talk about it over and over again because the depravity of men in certain cases goes beyond any person's wildest imagination. But yeah, that was it for Blink Twice. Let me know what you thought. If you've seen the movie, what did you think? Anything I may have missed out? Let me know in the comments down below. And on a lighter note, October is going to be a big month. We got Love is Blind coming out, the US version. And oh my God, we all know that's going to be some fucking trash. I cannot wait. There's also going to be Heartstopper. I'm very excited. It's the third and I think final season. And if you don't like Heartstopper, then you just don't have a heart. Your heart has stopped. But there's also a bunch of other movies that I'm dying to talk about, like The Substance. Guys, The Substance is easily the best movie of the year, and I'm just like, I'm dying to talk about it. It's still in cinema, so I can't really, I mean, I could talk about it, but then I wouldn't be able to show any clips of it, which I guess is a good thing, because the less you see of it and the less you know, the better. But also I just gotta get it out. So I don't know. Let me know what you think about The Substance. If you want to hear about it, I'm genuinely best movie of the year. No one can change my mind. And Demi Moore, it's time for her Oscar. Chop chop, it's coming. Also, Speak No Evil, I saw it. Apparently they're taking down any videos that use like clips of the film off of YouTube, like copyrights. And I'm like, damn, they are very, very protective of their IP. So if I do a video on that, it's gonna have to be a more general one, less visual, more audio. So let me know if you want that. I also have a video that I've been editing for like weeks now. Bros, you know Bros? That gay romantic comedy that flopped. It's just been sitting in my drive for so long, and I'm like, I should post it at some point, right? Let me know if you want to see that. But yeah, I think that's it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, stay safe, stay sane, stay stupid, and stay stuttering.